Performance Challenge Jury Charge, week number 12. Paragraph. Members of the jury, comma, you have now heard all the evidence in this case, period. You have also listened to the attorneys on each side tell you what they believe the evidence has shown, period. It is now your duty to decide the facts in this case and reach a decision, period, paragraph. I will now tell you the law which you must follow in reaching your decision, period. Although you may not like the law as I tell it to you, comma, or you might think that it should be different, comma, you are bound under the oath that you took to follow it, period. During your deliberations, comma, you should consider everything that I tell you and not single out only one part of it, period, paragraph. Your duty as jurors in this case is to try only the issues presented by the allegations in the indictment, period. The defendant is not on trial for any act or conduct that has not been set forth in the indictment, period. The indictment will be before you in the jury room, period. It is in no way to be considered by you as evidence in the case, period. It is simply a statement of charges with which the defendant is accused, and it creates no presumption nor unfavorable inference against the defendant, period, paragraph. A plea of not guilty has been entered, comma, and the law presumes the defendant is innocent, period. The defendant begins the trial with a clean slate and with no evidence against him, period, paragraph. The law permits nothing but legal evidence presented before the jury to be considered in support of any charge against the accused, period. The presumption of innocence alone is enough to acquit the defendant unless the jurors are satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt of the defendant's guilt after careful and impartial consideration of all the evidence in the case, period, paragraph. At the beginning of the trial, the attorneys for both sides told you what they believed that the evidence would show, period. At the end, they told you what they believed the evidence had, comma, in fact, comma, shown, period. Their comments to you are not evidence, comma, and you are free to agree or disagree with the attorneys for either side, period, paragraph. It is not required that the government prove guilt beyond all possible doubt, period. The test in a case of this sort is one of reasonable doubt, period. A reasonable doubt is a doubt based upon reason and common sense, period. That is the kind of doubt that would make a reasonable person hesitate to act, period, paragraph. The jury should remember the defendant is never to be convicted on mere suspicion or conjecture, period. The burden of proof upon the government never shifts, period, unless the government proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed each element of the offense with which he is charged, comma, you must find him not guilty, period, paragraph. Just because a defendant left the scene of a crime, comma, or left after he had been accused of a crime does not make him guilty, period. It could be motivated by many facts which are fully consistent with innocence, period. It does not create a presumption of guilt, comma, nor does the flight reflect feelings of guilt, period, paragraph. You should consider and weigh evidence or flight by the defendant in connection with all the other evidence in the case, and give it such weight as you feel it is fairly entitled to receive, period, paragraph. In order to prove that the defendant is guilty of the crime of bank robbery as charged in count 3 of the indictment, comma, the government must prove some things, period, paragraph. It may also be possible that this defendant did not actually participate in this bank robbery, but was serving as an accomplice, period. To that effect, you may convict this defendant of these charges simply because he aided and abetted another person, period, paragraph. Your first job will be to consider whether or not this defendant robbed the Chase Bank in this city on or around that particular date, period. He can only be convicted of the crime of bank robbery, period. If you find that the government has not proved the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, comma, then you must consider whether or not this defendant had in his possession stolen money that was taken from the bank during this robbery, period. Please understand that this will be a different charge, and you may find him guilty of just this one charge, period, paragraph. The crime charged in this case is a very serious crime, which requires proof of specific intent before the defendant can be convicted, period. Quote, specific intent, comma, close quote, as the term implies, comma, means more than the general intent to commit the act, period. To establish intent, comma, the government must prove that the defendant knowingly did an act, comma, which the law forbids, comma, intending to break that law, period, paragraph. The mere presence at the scene of a crime and knowledge that a crime is being committed is not enough to convict one of aiding and abetting, comma, unless there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the person charged with it did something to help with that crime, period. In other words, the government must prove that the defendant accused of this crime was an active participant and not merely someone who was standing around watching it happen, period, paragraph. In the course of your deliberations, comma, do not hesitate to examine your own views and change your opinion if you are convinced it is in error, comma, but do not give up your honest convictions as to the weight or effect of the evidence solely because of the opinion of your fellow jurors or for the purpose of returning a verdict, period. It would be wrong to do that, period, paragraph. You will note from the oath about to be taken by the clerks that they, comma, as well, comma, are not allowed to talk in any way or manner with any member of the jury on any subject that relates to the case at hand, period. They are here to help you in any way that they can, but any type of communication you may desire must be put in writing and then be given to me to answer for you, period, paragraph.